Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 330, and today's date is April 2nd, 2014. And the title of this episode is, As the War Drums Beat Louder, DHS Prepares for Domestic Terrorism. And we all understand what's going on with DHS. They've been buying billions of rounds of ammunition. They've been purchasing tanks. They've been infiltrating all the local law enforcement across the country, setting up command centers, giving them grants and loans to get tanks, to get weapons, to get uniforms, as long as they are in compliance with DHS. And all of this is for the control of the American person. Because when this economic collapse occurs and the U.S. government and the central bankers cannot get this war started, and all fingers are pointing to them, the people are going to say, all right, we had enough of this, and we want them out of power. And this is their biggest fear. But if they can get that war started, the blame will be shifted in other places. But we still have the same problem, is that the dollar, the value of the dollar will collapse, the economy will collapse, there'll be a lot of people out of work, a lot of people desperate looking for food and water, and those people who have weapons are going to, take matters into their own hands, and those people out there who have families are going to become desperate. They're going to be looking for food. Those people who have food have to protect what they have, and again, everyone is going to sit here and still go, what is the government doing? They are doing nothing as usual. Maybe we should remove the people in power. Maybe the bankers are to blame for this entire thing. And we saw Occupy Wall Street. That was just a little snapshot of what is coming. That was a little protest. Wait until the big collapse comes. These government officials are scared, and this is why they need their own personal police force. And we're going to get into what Jay Johnson was talking about today about domestic terrorism. And again, we see across what's happening in Ukraine, the war drums are beating louder and louder. The central bankers, they know they need to start this war to cover up this entire economic collapse. And this is what they've been pushing and pushing and pushing for. Now, will it happen in Ukraine? Maybe, maybe not. I think some other event will occur that will bring war to the United States and the rest of the world. Where it happens, not too sure. I'm still pointing towards Syria and Iran at this point, because the story does revolve around this, and it's much easier for them to blame it on Al-Qaeda, terrorism, than to say, oh, look, Russia sent a missile into one of the warships, or Russia is actually invading. I don't believe we're going to see that at this point. And again, we have to look at all the indicators and what's going on, but this is what's happening right now. Let's get into the economic collapse news, and we'll go through the report, and we'll talk about what is happening. Now, we understand out in Europe right now that the youth unemployment is absolutely terrible, and, this is the foundation of each and every one of the countries. In the United States, in every country, the youth unemployment is reaching 40, 50, 60% in many of the countries. These young people cannot find work. They do not have income coming in. They're not paying taxes. They're not saving money. They're not saving money to buy a home. They don't have disposable income. They are strapped living with their parents. They can't do anything at this point. They have a part-time job, which really doesn't help out. And this is the next generation coming up. And all of a sudden, countries are starting to take notice that, oh my God, the youth aren't working, and if we let 4, 5, 6 years go by, this is going to be a complete disaster. Well, of course it is. If they're not working for many, many years, you can forget housing, you can forget retail, you can forget pretty much everything, because they're the ones who are going to start buying and providing for their families. And right now, experts at a conference in Belgium warn that the European Union's youth unemployment crisis threatens to cripple the entire bloc. Analysts say the unemployment problem will have dire economic consequences unless it is dealt with in time. The situation may even worsen because those out of work for a long time are less likely to find a job. And we are seeing this happen every single place. It's in Europe, it is in the United States, and it is spreading all across the globe. And of course, it's always those private Western central bank countries that they're most worried about, because this is where the collapse is happening. This is where you see all the debt. This is where you see the austerity. This is where this cannot be sustained, and they understand this. Now, out on the corporate media, they're saying that factory orders beat expectations. Thanks to everything, it's all coming back now after the weather. And really what we're looking at is non-seasonally adjusted new orders actually dropped by 0.6% year on year, the biggest drop in 11 months, and capital goods new orders plunged to 10.2%. So what we're seeing right now is not exactly what the corporate media is trying to tell us. And again, they manipulate the numbers. They went back, they changed the numbers, they made the numbers a little bit lower. So this month it looked like it was doing much, much better. And again, they do this with every single month. They tell us how great it is. The next month comes, they go back, they reduce the amount to the amount that they need, and then they say, oh, look, the following month looks much better. And they've been continually doing this, and this is what we're seeing. And this goes on to say, the markdown in last month's seasonal data, the headline, common knowledge defining data, will be the factory orders beat expectations off a lower base. And this is exactly what we are seeing. Now, GM is saying, wow, we beat expectations. We have sales that completely beat our expectations by 4%. We only expected 0.8%. Things look really great. But if we really look at GM and what they're doing, and we understand they have this massive recall because they were trying to hide their ignition switch defect, and now they have to start recalling all these cars. And again, we've seen this time and time again with auto manufacturers. They try to cover up, they try to hide, and eventually it never works out. They always end up having to pay. They always end up having to pay a lot and recalling automobiles. But GM right now, their dealer inventory of GM autos on U.S. lots, which is called channel stuffing right now, that is what they're doing, and I talked about this quite a bit, just rose to a new all-time high of 815,000 units, up from 805,000 last month, and up 15% from the 743,000 units parked at dealer lots a year ago. So 15% increase in unpurchased inventory versus a 4% increase in sales. You do the math. This is not really working out. And again, this is an illusion. They're continually manufacturing, and they'll probably hit 1 million cars by spring of this year in dealer lots with channel stuffing. Now, ADP came out with their figures, and ADP employment change missed for the 4th month in a row, printing at 191,000 versus 195,000, which was expected. 191,000 is the average level of the last 2 years, so the trend is really not improving with private sector jobs. And we are definitely seeing that this amount will start to decline. We're seeing massive amount of layoffs, and we have more to come. Stores are closing. They're laying off people. Major financial institutions are laying off people, and they haven't hit the market yet. They announced them. They're getting ready for them, and then eventually all these people will start hitting the market. These numbers are going to really not look good as we go throughout this year. Now, we understand that the housing bubble is being pumped up. And again, we don't see this in every single part of the country all happening at the same time. And a lot of people write in saying, well, I'm not seeing it in my area. And other people are writing in, oh, yeah, we have like 5 or 6 homes vacant. Others are for sale. No one's coming around to buy them. Well, this is what happens during this period. It happened back in 2008 where we saw some areas still booming for the next 6-7 months, and other areas were completely depressed. And we're seeing the same thing happen right now. We're seeing the the bottom 20 markets, and we're seeing the top 20 markets. And the bottom markets, of course, is Southern California. We're seeing it in New York. A lot of the counties in New York, we're seeing it in Colorado, Montana, and these are certain counties in Montana. I'm not going to read every single county. Virginia, we're seeing this, and these are the bottom areas. The top markets right now that they still see prices rising, people still going to purchase homes are Mississippi, Georgia, Maryland, a lot of places in Florida. And again, we are definitely going to see all these areas start coming down, because a lot of the investment companies are starting to pack up shop, trying to get rid of their homes, and in other areas they're building it up until the last second, and then they're going to remove themselves from the picture. They're going to unload their houses to those people as soon as they get the markets to where they want them and the prices where they want them. And again, this happens all across the country. It does not happen at the same time. We saw the same thing happen in 2008, and I've told the story many times. I'll tell one more time. I lived in New York. I was selling my house prior to 2008. The market was dead, and it was funny because 4 or 5 months beforehand, the market was beautiful. I mean, people were coming, houses were being sold, and of course, as soon as I put mine up for sale, nobody came around. But then I talked to my sister-in-law in Florida, and she said real estate was incredible down there. They saw no slowdown whatsoever. But what happened 6 to 7 months later, all of a sudden Florida tanked, and actually tanked worse than New York, where I was living at the time. And we are going to see the same thing happen here. We're already seeing places slow down. Other places are not seeing a slowdown, but it will catch up everywhere, because we have to remember what has been happening. We have to remember the Fed is continually still pumping in money into the banks, buying the toxic real estate. They have all these foreclosures and other toxic real estate on the books of the Fed, which is now topping $4 trillion. We also see that mortgage companies have been laying off people by the tens of thousands. Mortgage applications down by 66%. We see housing, new home building down. So all of this is not looking good. Yes, the government is trying to pump this up and keep it going as long as they can by offering adjustable rate mortgages, by offering loans to subprime borrowers. But we have to remember, it is not the same as in 2008, where unemployment was really, really low. They really didn't change the calculation that much. They have, but now they've really manipulated, and actually they're lying about the data. Census Bureau has been caught on this, that they've been relaying facts and information that wasn't true, and now they're caught. And again, now we have to look at the picture between 2008 and 2014. Right now, 38% of the people lost their wealth back then. Millions upon millions upon millions of foreclosed homes, millions upon millions of short sales. People have bad credit. People have been laid off from their full-time job. They might have got another full-time job, but they're making less money. Other people have part-time jobs, and they are barely making ends meet. And again, we're seeing more and more people being unemployed. They will not be able to find work, and this is going to be a very big problem, because right now the American person is tapped out. They cannot sustain what is coming. They don't care about the subprime real estate mortgages. They don't care about the adjustable rate mortgages. And I know they're giving 100% financing, but the people are just tapped out. They're not looking to purchase homes, and this is why we're not seeing that boomerang effect that they were talking about, that all the people that lost their homes, who are out of work, who have bad credit, are going to come right back into the market. I really don't see this happening whatsoever at this time. Now, of course, the Obama administration is out there, and they're letting everyone know that Obamacare was a complete success. We got over 7.4 million sign-ups, and everything looks great. Well, let me just say, sign-ups and people who are actually paying are two different things. And we know for a fact they have no idea who's paying and who is not paying. But a recent article came out that President Barack Obama has overstated the number of previously uninsured young adults who have gained coverage through the Affordable Care Act. According to an analysis by the National Center for Public Policy Research, Obama said on Tuesday that more than 3 million young adults have gained insurance under this law by staying on their family's plan. That figure was based on a 2012 report from the Department of Health and Human Services, says David Hogberg. A Congressional Budget Office reports in February Obamacare would still leave 31 million people uninsured by 2024. And again, they have no idea who is actually paying or not paying. The system continually crashes. The information is not being forwarded to the insurance companies. They really have no idea. They're just using reports and information that they had before, that they projected that this was going to happen, and they don't really know what the true numbers are. And right now, there are a lot of reports out there saying that the actual amount is actually 20% less, and might even be more than that, because when people get their bill and they see how much it is and they see what the insurance is like, most of the people drop it because they say, well, I can't afford this and I am not paying, and I barely can make my ends meet with food, rent, clothing, and everything else, so the insurance is just going to go bye-bye at this time. Now, businesses are out there, and there was a Business Confidential survey that Obamacare will add up to $200 million in cost. Obamacare will cost large companies between $4,800 and $5,900 more per employee and add hundreds of millions to their overhead. And you know what's going to happen with this. This means less people are going to be employed. They're going to try to reduce their numbers, and this is why Obama put that mandate in that you have to prove to the IRS why you want to contract your employment in your company, because they don't want people going under the certain numbers so they don't have to take on Obamacare. And this is exactly why he put this mandate in there, because they started to realize that, we're going to lose jobs because of Obamacare. And to protect Obamacare, they put this mandate in, and he created a law and put this in there, and this is why they won't be able to do this at this time, and they're going to be stuck with all these fees and costs. And this means that more and more people are not going to be hired by companies, because they're going to say, if we take on another person, we're going to have to lay out more money, so people will have to double up on work. And this is how companies do it. And this goes on to say, factoring in the healthcare laws, added mandates, fees, and regulatory burdens, employers anticipate cost hikes between $163 million and $200 million in 2016, a 4.3% increase. By 2023, employers will be paying 8.4% more than what they would have otherwise be spending for their employees' health care. So because of Obamacare, businesses will be spending a lot more money, which means they're not going to hire more people. So eventually, this will hurt the job market further. Now, to really make us feel good and to really like the government officials and those who are being elected, the Supreme Court is striking down the overall limits on campaign contributions. The Supreme Court further loosened the reins on political giving Wednesday, ruling that big company donors can dole out money to as many candidates and political committees as they want, as long as they abide by the limits on contributions to each individual campaigns. The decision wipes away the overall limit of $123,000 for 2013 and 2014. It will allow the wealthiest contributors to pour millions of dollars into candidate and party coffers. So we can see what's happening right now. These government officials are going to be receiving more and more money. They're going to be more corrupt, and we should really outlaw this. They do not need contributions to run. They should run on their merits. And if we're going to have something, I believe that each candidate should have a set allotment, and saying, this is your allotment, this is your allotment for running for public office. Tell us what you're going to do for the people. not for the companies that are paying you, because that doesn't end well. You let us know what you're going to do for us, and this is the money you get. This is what you can do, and you can have as many ads as you want as long as you don't use up all your money. And each person will be equal doing this, but what are you going to do for the people? Not for the companies who are backing you. And this is what needs to be done at this time. Now, we understand that DHS with their fusion centers, NSA, that they're all spying on us, and they don't care about the Fourth Amendment. And of course, according to the Fourth Amendment, they cannot do this, but they really don't care. They don't care about the Constitution whatsoever. They don't care about the people's rights. And right now, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, admitted as much in a letter sent last week to U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, who 2 months ago was promised an answer about the NSA spying. Pretty much they're spying on every single person, and right now this goes against the Fourth Amendment. And Wyden said this allows the government to look at the emails of law-abiding Americans, and this needs to be fixed right now because it is in violation of the Fourth Amendment. And what the government has been doing is running a federal human relations database. This is what he alleged. When the government has the information about who you called, when you called, they know a lot about your private life. And I've been saying all along that they have been setting up social profiles on every single person. They are taking all this information and correlating it, and they're checking to see who you know, where you've been, and what you've been doing, so they can put you on their list. So if you're in contact with someone who is who believes in the Second Amendment, in the rights, in the Constitution, who believes the government is not for the people, and you might not believe this yourself, but you're associated with this person and you speak to them on the phone, you are on the list right now. This is what they are doing. They are making complete social profiles to track you. They're tracking you with facial recognition. They're tracking you with your phone calls, with your information on your cell phone, with the tracking device on your cell phone. They have backdoors into pretty much every single system, and all of this is to create these lists and to keep track of every single person. And this is why they're starting the Real ID right now, because they really want to make sure they know where everyone is, who they are, and where they're going. And they're putting an RFID chip in the driver's license. Your iris scan, your fingerprint, and your DNA swab will be incorporated into the federal database with this Real ID, and all the states will have to give this information to the government once they're all in compliance. And then this information will be shared with Canada and Mexico. So all your private information now is in the public arena. They will know where you are. There will be checkpoints, and they will understand what is going on. And again, the NSA spying is not just for that. They're also spying to find out about investment ideas, what other government officials are doing, to blackmail judges. So this is for many, many different reasons. And again, this is completely in violation of the Fourth Amendment. And again, these government officials took an oath. They went into the government understanding that they had a contract with we the people, and they're breaking the contract at this time, and they should be relieved of their duty. Now, we talk about Turkey, and we understand that Erdogan is a part of the puppet government, which is controlled by the United States and other countries. And we understand this. And we understand when the United States, the central bankers, control the puppet government, they really don't care about what's happening with the people. Like, Erdogan was using water cannons on the people. The United States really didn't say that much. The opposition saying that the elections were fixed. Not much for democracy there, because they already have the puppet government, so they don't really care what the people are saying. And recently, there were elections in Turkey. Erdogan won. The opposition saying no, this was fixed. And what they found was that they found ballots marked for the main opposition, Republicans' people, and they found it in the garbage of 6 schools used as polling stations in the southern province of Azmanye. And they're saying that this election was completely fixed. The city residents reported the incident to the police when they found the used ballots in the trash, and they're saying they want a redo of the elections. Again, there were no international people in there making sure the elections were done properly, and the United States, the central bankers, really are staying quiet about this. And we notice this happens in pretty much every single country out there where the central bankers and the U.S. government have control. They have control in Libya. They have control in Iraq. They have control in Lebanon. They have control in Ukraine. So whatever happens with the people, no big deal. We don't care at this point. We have control. So if the people want to protest, no, we will push them down, just like in Thailand. People protesting, no, we will not allow this. And this is what really happens. Now, on the other side, if they don't have control of the country, people should have the rights. People should have democracy. People should have the ability to speak their mind. And you can see the double standards that are going on in every single one of these countries. Now, the House approves Ukraine aid and sanctions on Russia. The U.S. House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly in favor of a bill Tuesday to provide Ukraine with $1 billion in loan guarantees and authorize sanctions against Russian officials in response to their actions in Crimea. And again, the sanctions are on individuals, on banks, and of course the government has absolutely no problem sending $1 billion over to Ukraine. Why they can't figure out if they should allow unemployment to go on a little bit longer to help the people of the United States who can't find work because there's no jobs out there. And but there's no problem voting on 378 to 34 to send $1 billion to Ukraine. That's not a big deal. And now the bill goes to President Obama. He has to sign it, and of course he's going to sign it because they were part of this whole entire coup d'etat. And the legislation the legislation backs a $1 billion aid package for Kiev government, would provide an additional $50 million to help promote democracy in Ukraine. Additionally, it authorized $100 million for enhanced security cooperation by Ukraine with other states in Central and Eastern Europe. And we can see across the country in the United States that we have many, many problems here. Detroit is struggling. We see people who are unemployed, who are starving, but let's give some money to Ukraine. And they do this all across the world. Billions upon billions of dollars are pouring into countries like Iraq, Libya, Lebanon, Israel, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, into Africa, billions and billions of dollars to keep the war effort going. But here in the United States, we have no money. We have nothing. And this is the excuse they continually use. Okay, now S&P, they decided to cut Crimea's rating to a default grade. Now, what I find is very interesting. You have to remember, S&P downgraded the United States. The United States were very angry back then. It was Tim Geithner, very pissed off. So they end up suing S&P, and of course, the United States, they had nothing to do with it. But of course, we know for a fact that they were suing because the United States was downgraded. And S&P also was at one of the credit rating agencies that said, the subprime securities, AAA rating, they are fantastic, and look what happened there. So I don't know how much trust you really want to put into these companies, but they went out and they decided, of course, probably from the government saying, listen, this is what we want you to do. Go out to Crimea, and we want you to cut their long-term rating for Crimea. So let's get this straight here. Crimea, okay, which is backed by Russia right now, is increasing the pensions for all the people, giving tax breaks for businesses to come in and spur economic growth. Ukraine is in a huge amount of debt right now. Can't make payments on anything. Is actually seeing energy costs double and triple. People are having a hard time living. They have more debt than they know what to do with. But we're not seeing them downgrade Ukraine at this point. Very interesting. And this goes on to say that Standard & Poor's has cut its long-term rating for Crimea after it failed to pay interest on bonds of $12 million on time. Crimea's communication minister said the move was part of a broader information war against Russia. And of course, we know this to be a fact. And if we look at the information, according to the information we have received from Crimean government officials that we understand are managing Crimea's debt, Crimea has sufficient cash in its budget general fund on the coupon payment date and had submitted the necessary documents in advance to the Ukrainian Treasury, where the fund is held. We also understand that the Ukrainian Treasury did not make the payment, so they downgraded Crimea. Very, very interesting. We can see the propaganda is flying wild out there, with Russian troops being built up, with Crimea who can't make payments, so we have to downgrade Crimea at this time, and we can see what is going on right now. And then we had J.P. Morgan yesterday saying that they're imposing sanctions on transfers of money and things like that, and Russia's largest bank halts foreign currency loans. And we can see this is going back and forth, trying to build and provoke and provoke and provoke, and this is exactly what is happening. And if, for instance, Russia stops gas imports or Europe decides not to import gas from Russia, Europe risks losing $215 billion. Europe will have to spend up to $215 billion through investments if it decides to stop buying Russian natural gas. Europe needs natural gas demand to go down by 15 billion cubic meters to be able to stop purchasing Russian gas. It would also have to spend around $40 billion on more expensive alternative energy sources. Stopping supplies of Russian gas will lead to a situation whereby every European will have to take a cold shower at least once a month or more than that. So we can see what is happening. They are in a very tight spot. They're not putting sanctions on Russia because, again, we understand that if they place full sanctions on Russia, the boomerang effect would come back to Europe and it would come back to the United States. And we know this. And we know this for a fact, and this is why they're not doing it at this point. Maybe sometime in the future they will, but right now they realize they have to be very, very careful. So in the meantime, what is Russia doing? Well, we know Russia is making deals bypassing the dollar. They're making deals with China. They're making deals with India. They're making deals with North Korea. They're making deals with Syria. And yes, they're making deals with Iran. Right now, Russia and Iran said to make a deal for $20 billion worth of oil for goods, and they're going to bypass the dollar right now. The White House is out there, and they're saying that, such a deal would raise serious concern and would be inconsistent with the nuclear talks between world powers and Iran. What does Russia buying oil from Iran have to do with nuclear talks? It makes no sense. I understand the United States still has sanctions on Iran, but they're not using the U.S. dollar. They're bypassing it. They're going to make the deal. And how would this affect the nuclear talks if it's just about the nuclear weapons? Well, we know it isn't. It really isn't about the nuclear weapons, and this is why it would raise serious concerns, because the central bankers do not want Iran's oil to be sold without using the dollar. The IMF is trying to infiltrate the banks. They're trying to get control, and this is what's really going on there. And of course, it would be inconsistent with inconsistency with the secretive document, with the deal of what's really going on. So that would be inconsistent because they're making plans with Iran, trying to force them into using the dollar in their banks and having the IMF come in and the central bankers to take control of their banks. And this is not looking good. This deal is completely falling apart. Now, NATO is building up their military war preparations. They are putting in missiles. They're bringing in troops, and they're doing drills within Ukraine where U.S. troops are coming in. And of course, NATO is also bringing in representatives on Tuesday to discuss the possibility of sending NATO military instructors to Ukraine to train Ukrainian civil defense forces. And the U.S. Navy right now is sending warship to Black Sea in direct response to Ukraine circumstances. The U.S. will be sending a Navy warship to the Black Sea. Pentagon spokesman Army Colonel Steve Warren told reporters that the ship, not yet named, will be there to conduct exercises with allies and is a direct response to the circumstances in Ukraine. So we can see what NATO and the U.S. are doing. They are bringing in all military assets again. They're surrounding Russia at this time, and they are building this up. Now, Poland is out there and saying, they're asking NATO, you know what, we want at least 10,000 troops on our territory. We're very nervous. We border right against Russia, and we want you to bring in 10,000 troops. NATO foreign ministers met in Brussels to consider requests for soldiers to be deployed in Poland and the Baltic states, all of which share borders with Russia. NATO is expected to make further announcements on the deployment of military assets in the coming weeks. This might include sending troops and warships to Eastern Europe and the Baltic. So we can see what's happening. Everything is being built up, and Russia right now is being surrounded. The same thing they did in China with the pivot to Asia. Surround China, surround Russia at this time. Now, we understand in the Middle East that the people of those countries are trying to push out the central bankers and the U.S. government, and they're fighting and they're doing their best to try to get them out. Libya is making headway there. Iraq is trying to fight and push the central bankers and the U.S. government and the puppet government out. And the United States plans to send advanced attack helicopters to help Iraq quell the Sunni revolt. The administration of President Barack Obama has approved the lease of 6 AH-64 Apache attack helicopters for Iraqi military. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency said the project included training for Iraqi pilots in missions against al-Qaeda. These helicopters will go into immediate use in Iraq with significant help from the United States, an official said. And of course, we need to protect the oil, we need to protect the ports, and we need to protect the central banks. We cannot let these people overrun the country, or they will sell the oil not using the U.S. dollar. If they start doing that, countries will stop keeping the countries will no longer keep the U.S. dollar in their reserves. They will send it back to the United States, and we can see this is the big problem. And right now with Russia, China, Iran, and India bypassing the U.S. dollar, we're seeing that this is getting worse and worse as time goes on. Now, of course, Turkey is increasing their support for militants in Syria. They're trying to help out there because they're losing the battle, and the president of Syria is making a huge amount of headway, pushing the rebels back. And now Turkey is coming in. They're going to supply them with more weapons with Saudi Arabia, and they're going to try to help them push Assad's army back. And again, Assad is making a huge amount of headway. The central bankers, the U.S. government, they are getting very nervous about this, and they're seeing that they are definitely losing the battle. And it's hard to say right now if they're just going to let this happen, which I can't believe they will, because they've been trying for 3 years to overthrow Assad. I believe when their backs are completely against the wall, they don't know what else to do. This is when we're going to see the event. They're just going to throw up their hands and say, let's do this, and we're going to see the false flag event hit the United States. Now, the Joint Chief Chairman, General Martin Dempsey, said Tuesday that Israel is confident that the U.S. military will intervene in Iran if the country abandons diplomatic talks and develops nuclear weapons. Well, of course the United States will. They have an agreement with Iran. If Israel is attacked by Iran, or Israel is in a war with Iran, the United States is going to come to its aid and help them with this war. Now, the question is, how is this going to get started? Is Israel going to use a false flag? Is there going to be a false flag here in the United States? And again, we have to see what's going on. Israel closed all their embassies. Of course, it was a payment problem that's been going on for 2 years. It just so happens it happened right now where they decided to close all embassies, and we can see that Israel is preparing and put into their budget a war with Iran. And again, when the central bankers' backs are against the wall, this is what's going to happen. They're going to push this event forward to take the blame off the central bankers, the U.S. government, for this collapse, and this is what they've been preparing for. Now, Jay Johnson was out there and he was talking on MSNBC, and what he is saying right now, the number one priority of DHS is domestic violent extremism or terrorism. So what that means is they are coming after people in the United States. And what is a domestic terrorist? Well, those people who are Second Amendment supporters, Christians, patriot groups, law enforcement patriots, returning veterans, pretty much any of us that oppose the government or believe in the Constitution. And again, we see what is happening right here. This is on the top of his agenda. This is what DHS was created for, to go after those violent extremisms, terrorists who are domestically in this country. And of course, they're going to start off with, oh, we're going after the Al-Qaeda, the radicalized people, and then it's going to spread down to the everyday person who believes in the Second Amendment, those people who are veterans. And this is how they do it, very incremental. Right now, you know, it sounds great that they're looking for Al-Qaeda. Some of them are Americans. They came back radicalized, but then it spreads to the everyday person, and this is what happens. And we have to remember, they've been gearing up for this, that all this time now, they've been infiltrating every single part of the country, all the local law enforcement agencies. They've been infiltrating by using the fusion centers on spying on every single American in this country. They've been stocking up billions and billions of rounds of ammunition. They have tanks. They're giving armament and tanks to local law enforcement. They're implementing the Real ID system so they can have checkpoints to make sure they know who is where they're supposed to be. And this is exactly the same techniques that the SS, the brown shirts used in Nazi Germany. And we're seeing this. Yes, in the beginning they started out as, you know, protecting the people, everything's fine, and eventually it got worse and worse and worse, and we're seeing the same thing happen right now. And this is their main agenda. This is the chief's top priority right now, because we are getting very close to the economic collapse. Listen, everyone, you need to be prepared for what is coming. There is a huge event that will hit the United States. It's going to be a false flag attack, because we can see the United States and other European nations and NATO are all positioning for this war. And I've been saying this for quite a while, that they are positioning. And this just doesn't happen overnight. They have to do it incrementally over time. But you need to be prepared, and this allows you to be prepared. It allows you to get food, allows you to get water, allows you to get medicine. It allows you to purchase gold and silver to protect your wealth. It allows you to purchase weapons to defend yourself when the lights go out, when there's martial law, when people who aren't prepared. You need to protect your family. You are stocking up on all these goods that are people going to want. You need to have the weapons. And I've told this story before. I have a brother-in-law that lives up in Long Island, and we had the hurricane out there, and there was a complete blackout. There was no electricity. There were no cops around at all, because they can't be every place, and we all know this. And when he was in his home, all he heard, and it was pitch dark, all he heard was windows breaking, people going up and down the streets, houses being robbed. He didn't have a weapon. All he had was a bat, and he said it was really scary sitting there in his home, hearing all these windows, because most of the people left. They went to hotels. He stayed in this house, and it was very scary, where people were coming and just breaking into homes, and he didn't know if he was going to be next or not. But just hearing this outside of your house in pitch darkness, he said they had to shut off all the candles. They blew them all out, so they didn't know that someone was there, and they were ready to attack someone if someone did come in, because if they saw the lights on, they were afraid that they would definitely come to that house knowing that there were people there and to attack them. So you can see why you need to protect you and your family, and everyone needs to have food, water, supplies, medicine all ready. And this is, we have time. Start preparing. If you have been preparing, continually prepare. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.